Okay, to start this off, let's talk about what is actually going on here. So with transparency, we've got these two different types of transparency within Unreal, and we've got opacity masked, which is going to be an on-off. It's either going to be visible or non-visible. And then you've got full translucency that's got varying degrees of transparency, and you can think of things like gradients and stuff like that, right? And these tricks are usually used on a card system, and you can think of that as maybe leaves on trees, or it could be used for hair strands, stuff like that. But if we go and take a look at the wireframe, instead of go to lit, we can go to wireframe. We can take a look around at this drawing mode that we have here, and you can see that these are just mapped to these cards that you have here. If we go to lighting only, then we can just kind of see what's going on with this on here. Now, the materials that we're going to set up are two-sided materials, so that's why we can only see these cards on one side whenever you do that. So let's go back to lit like this. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be making these cards, and we're going to be mapping transparency onto them. So I can hop on over to Maya real quick, and I can show you what was done to make these different cards. I just have a group, and they're all set in this group. But if I take a polygon plane, and we go ahead and click here, if we go to the modeling area, and we go to create polygon primitives, and we go to plane, option box. If we do a, let's just do width, height 100 by 100 and divisions 2 by 2 just to start off. And what we can do is take this and we can rotate it. I can hold down J and I can rotate this and snap to 90-degree increments, or we can type into the channel box for that, like that. And if I take a look at the size that I'm trying to get these cards to be, I was trying to get it to be the size of one of our Minecraft cubes that we have. So if I show that, here's the cube that we have, and it looks like for my grid, what I would have to do is change the subdivisions on my grid to 20 like that, and I can get this here. Okay, so I'll hide those cards. So this needed to be, if I want a division of 3 by 3, because if you remember in our what we're doing in our textures, we were trying to divide this up to where on this block we had a front, left, right, we had top, a bottom, and a back, and we weren't using this row here. But if we use that same texture setup, we can steal that same kind of setup, and on this one UV 0 to 1 space, we could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different types of grass on there. And we'll hop into Photoshop and we'll see what that looks like. Now, if I scaled this up and I wanted to get this to be just the right size, it looks like math-wise, if I made this 1.5 like that, and then I froze the transformations on it, I could do that. Or you can see we've got a width and a height of 100. If I put this back to 1, we could either scale it that way, or we could do width, height 150 like that. So it's up to you how you want to do that. So I can go ahead and just delete history on that. The next thing I would do is, or we can right click on here and go to edge, select all the edges like this. Actually, that's getting in the way, so let's go to edge. I'll just double click this. Let's try something else here. To get this out of the way, we can go say show isolate select view selected. So it's just because the joints are taking precedence over selection on there. So this is the isolate select mode. Makes it a little bit easier to isolate things and work with them. So right click, say edge, and select all the edges. So the next thing I'm going to do is shift right click, and I'm going to say detach components. And what that's going to do is, now if we right click and go to our faces, if we double click on a face, you can see that it's kept this as one object, but it's split all these parts and it's detached each one of them like this, right? And I believe, let's see, it's under edit mesh, and we've got a detach right here like that. So you can find that in the menu there if you want. After we have it detached, there's a couple different things that we could do. We go to separate, and if we separate, it should break these all into a bunch of different pieces that you see here. But it only separated that that one piece off, which a little odd. But let's just go say separate like that, and that time it did all the different pieces. I'm going to just select this, hold down shift, and middle mouse drag it up into this group here. I'll delete history on the entire thing here, so I'll just select this group, alt shift D to delete history. So now we got our different panels that we've got. Now you might want to put them in a particular order, and you could call this plane underscore 01 like this, and then this would be number 2. So you can select things and middle mouse drag them and reorder them. And if I paste the name, let's copy the name of this, and then I'll paste it, and then I'll just change that 01 to 2. Now this needs to be our third one like this. So I'm just trying to be organized with things, and let's go through and just arrange them. Let's see, 4, 5, and this will be number 6. Then we got 7 and 8 and 9, like that. Okay. So the next thing I want to do is I want to get the pivot point down at the center of each one of these and then put it down below. I can turn on wireframe unshaded if that helps with any of this, but you can see to center the pivot, we can select the object and go modify center pivot. And if you tap D, you can move the pivot around. If we hold down V, it temporarily turns on vert snap, so we can just move this down right here like that and tap D. Let's do the same thing on this one. Select it, and it's in object mode. Tap D. I'll hold down V and then move up here and snap just like that. Tap D to release it. Select this object. Tap D, and then I'll hold down V, and I could snap to that vert. But then what I need to do is go back and say modify center pivot. Let's just do this on all these. So you can repeat last command in Maya too. So if I select this and I tap G, it'll repeat the last command for this. So I'm just getting these all centered just like this, and if we select them, should be good to go for that. But I need to push this down, so we'll tap D, hold down V, snap, D, hold down V, snap, and hitting D to release. Tap D, hold down V, snap, tap D to release, D, V, D, just like that. D, V, snap, D, D, V, snap. Oops, it'll do for that. Let's do it again. D, hold down V, and I'll snap here. Tap D, and let's just make sure. Okay, yeah, we're good for that. I'll tap D, hold down V, and then snap down here like that. And then now we should have all of our pivots set to the bottom here like this. And what we can do is select all of our planes, put on the move tool, and if I hold down X, I can snap this to the origin of the world right here like this. Okay, and because we held all those planes and we held down X, we temporarily turned on grid snapping. Now these will probably have some transforms on them, so you can see it's got information about the location changing and everything. We can select all these, select this one, hold down shift, select everything, and then go modify freeze transformations on that. And then now everything should be set. And now, if we go back to our show, isolate select, and release view selected, we've got all of our planes that we have in here. I just call this grass cards. underscore version 2. Let's just do that like that. And then you could export this out as an FBX. So I'll just say File, Export, Selection, FBX, and I called it grass cards, 9 cards. So I'll just do underscore version 2, just like that. So we can save that. And then when we're pulling this into Unreal, I made a folder called grass cards right in here to keep it all kind of organized. So I'll just make a new folder. If I can type, I'll do version 2 like that. And then to import these in, I wanted to show the import options for this. So if we import and then we find that FBX, I want you to see under the mesh area. I don't know if this is open for you or closed, but you want to get to this combine meshes area and set that to false. Normally I think that would be a pretty good thing for you to have on, but in this case we are going to tell it to be false, and then whenever we do that, it's going to pick up on the fact that we have a bunch of separate meshes. So I'll just say import all like that, and then you should be able to see each one of these. There is a little bit of work to get set up for this. I like to open these up, so double click on it and double click on each one of them and open each one of them up. And let me go ahead and do that. Okay, I have them all open, but the thing that I like to do is this. I like to go to the materials section and find the material instance that we have, and this is what I made for grass. We'll take a look at some of the different options for that, but just know that at the beginning you can, even before you have your material completely made, you can make the material instance and you can start assigning things to each one of these. So for each one I would assign them. I don't want any collision happening on any of the grass cards either, so you could either go to look for the collision area, you could go to collision, and you can see collision got that set to set that to none, or you can type in collision and check for collision presets. Yeah, I want to have that set to no collision on there. So I would do that for each one of these and actually set up each one of those cards. Okay, so that's how to at least get the geometry set up for that. Let's hop on over to Photoshop and take a look at the textures and what we need to do for the textures. Okay, here we are inside of Photoshop, and what I've actually done is gone into the channels area and made a brand new channel. And you can do that by going to the area by layers in here. You can see channels. If you don't see that, you can go to window, and you should be able to find channels within through there and load that up. And you want to click the new channels area. And what I did for this is, if you double click on there, you can get some settings for, you can change the name of your channel. That doesn't really matter. For this masked area, what I was doing was setting this color to black and the opacity to 100%. And what that allows me to do is, if I have RGB turned on like this, it will actually show you the texture underneath. So it shows you the layer that you got for color, but then also shows you what's going on with this this channel. And again, it's black and white. So if you started off with just pure black, you could start to paint into here. And I could show you with this, if I have a paintbrush, I'm just using some of the brushes, and I think I just have like maybe a soft airbrush. Again, the pixel size is really, really large, so I'd have to make this a bit smaller. And if I paint it into this white right here within this area, you can see how I could add and reveal basically that color that's underneath of it. I'm basically painting directly into the alpha channel now with this within through here. And if I wanted to use the pencil tool, that's just going to be a pure like on off kind of thing. So this is like painting with pixel art. at that point, right? So I could do some stuff like this. And so here's some changes with that. I just chose the pencil brush for these down here, and on here I used the actual brush. Now if I turn this off, you can see what's going on with the color. There's nothing special really going on with the color. If I overlay this over the top of it and have this on while I have RGB, I can see what's going to happen with the alpha, and I can see basically how that alpha is going to knock this thing out. Okay, so the next part is saving this out. So I want to do a file save as, and I'm going to save it on the computer. I'm going to change this type to Targa, which this is something new with Photoshop. Just kind of really annoying to me, but I have to save it as a copy to do it as a Targa file format, so you might find that depending on what version you're working with. So I can put that on Targa. I've already got this Grass version 1. I'll just save over the top of it, and what you want to make sure that you're doing is saving with 32 bits. So you're actually saving the alpha channel at that point. So 8 bits for 8, 16, 24, and then another channel is going to give you 32 bits. So you need to save that as a 32-bit Targa file. So go ahead and save that out like that. And I've already got this in Unreal. And if I go to the textures area, so I made a folder for textures, and if I re-import that, we should be able to see some of those changes pop up. So you saw how I just drew with that little pencil brush, and you can see those changes come in over there like that. So as I stopped the video, I went through and I filled in this material already with all the grass cards and set all the collision to none on those. And you can see here's the various versions that we have. And let's talk now about this material and this texture that we added in through here for this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that texture just because I imported and did some changes to it. Now if I go to the material area, and if I open up this grass material that I made, I'll show the changes that I made to it. So everything's the same as far as the shader and what we had from before. The only thing is that I took that new alpha channel that we have here with this base colors, I piped that alpha into the opacity masked and opacity area. Okay, so let's take a look at this and changing our material type for this. Now I did copy everything from the parent material and made a whole brand new parent material, and the reason for that is I'm working with transparency, and so I'm going to change the material type on this. So if you just click off of this, or you click this big block here, you get access to what's going on with the material. This blend mode I put to masked, and if you do that, that is going to be the transparency type that is just purely on or off. And you can see that it's going to open up this opacity masked area that you see here for this, and you can plug in that alpha into that slot there. Now if you wanted this to be full transparent, then you can put this on translucent, and you can see how that changed through there. The reason this is working is I've got that one map, and it's got, remember at the bottom we did the pencil brush, so that's just pure on and off pixel data. And up here there's gradation. So in this same alpha channel I'm able to drive the opacity and opacity mask. You can see when we do translucent, the opacity mask gets grayed out on that. I'll show you why that's not the case for when we have opacity masked and we're using this two-sided foliage. So the other thing is to kind of note is even if we have gradation in our transparency in our alpha, if we have this unmasked, it's going to force that transparency to be either on or off. So it's going to be completely opaque, or it's going to be completely transparent, and it takes a look at the grayscale values and makes a determination of if it should push it up and make it pure white, or if it should push it down and make it pure black. So take a look at this as we change that to translucent. You can see how we got this gradation going on for that, for these different pieces. And if we do masked, we've got this. I will say opacity masked is the better version that has better sorting. If you use full translucent, sometimes it has trouble drawing what should be in front and what should be from behind. So that's something to kind of keep note from. Also, this two-sided, if you turn that off, you're only going to be drawing just one side of the material. It's taking a second for it to process that. So you can see how it's only going to draw this one side. So if you want to see the back side of your grass cards, make sure to put that on two-sided, otherwise you're going to get this type of behavior. So we've got two-sided on there for that. And now this shading model, if we're doing grass and leaves and things like that, they do have this two-sided foliage model, and if you put it on there, I think the default is this default lit. If we put it on this two-sided foliage, what that allows you to do is you could plug in the subsurface color area. We can run the RGB out from this and put it into the subsurface color, and then that uses that as a model to look at the backside of the textures. And instead of translucent, sorry, this should be unmasked for this shading model. And what it does is on the back side of this, it would normally be a bit darker, and what we can do is with this this color piped into subsurface color, it shades the back side, the darker side, and it has the effect of, think of this, if you've ever looked up into a tree and you've seen a leaf and you've seen the sun kind of shining through it, it's got this subsurface effect to it, right, where that light kind of bleeds through. So they're trying to simulate that, and so this base color being in the subsurface color area is basically this approximation of that. It's trying to do a faux version of that. So this is going to get this subsurface color. And what I was telling you about the opacity masked, whenever you have that version on, opacity is open too. Now I just have the alpha piped right into that, but you could make this into a parameter, and it could go from 0 to 1, and that controls how much of that subsurface light comes through on that material. So if you're going to just use that version, you could break the connection of that, hold down Alt, you could right click, say promote to parameter, and you could have opacity, and then that could become something that you could play around with for that. I'll go ahead and just save it for now, and then take a look at what that could do for us. Let that finish up, and pull down and through here like this. Okay, so if I go to the material instance of this, and we've got the opacity channel, and then maybe I could play around with that, but this is on this material instance. So let me tell you what I did for this, which is kind of interesting. On a material instance, once you make a material instance, you can actually override the blending mode on that, and so I put that to translucent on here. If I put it back to masked, we're going to get that same behavior that we had before, so nothing's really changed with that. We could turn off the two-sided shading, so there's a few options that you can do within the material instance to change it to be something a little bit different than the parent material. But now that I got that opacity channel, you can see here is the back side of this, and this is in shadow and through here. So if I put the opacity to 0, it's got like full light. If I put it to 1, you can see it's getting that full shadow on there. So depending on where you want that to kind of sit, and maybe you just want a little bit of darkening from the shadow area, you can play around with this opacity within there. Now this doesn't match at that point if I want to use full gradation and full transparency. So let's go back to the material here, and instead of this, let's click on here, and instead of masked, I'm going to do translucent like this, and then I'll save it. And because I set this on the material instance, we're going to have to do some changes to that too. And the other thing is, I told you I could make this opacity thing kind of drive that two-sided foliage change that we made, that's not going to be good for us for full translucency, so I need to plug in the alpha back into the opacity like this and save that. One last time, should remember to do that. So again, this is why we want to use material instances. It takes quite a bit of time to get all this set up and tweak this, and you wouldn't want to be doing this every time you make these kind of changes. So we try to get everything set up pre-hand to give ourselves controls, and then once we have the controls, then we can start to tune this stuff. So in the material instance, I'm going to put this back to translucent, and you can see now I've got full gradation on here like this. Okay, so the translucency, it does have a different shading to it, and you can see it does shade a bit darker. Here's the back side of it, here's the front side. It's still kind of dark. So the only thing that I found that could maybe potentially help with that is this. If we go to the parent material, and I know this is getting kind of messy with this spaghetti wires and everything that's going on there. We could do some reroute nodes and try to clean that up a little bit. But what I wanted to show you is what we could do with emissive. So we've got all the same controls that we had from emissive from before, but I added this LIRP node, a linear interpolation node. So think of Photoshop and think of two different layers. So you've got this normal emissive thing that we had kind of going on before, which doesn't really have any emissive, and then I took the red, green, blue, the RGB, and then piped it into this B slot. So we basically, for emissive, have no emissive up top here because this is black right now. We could change that in the material instance, but as far as right now, there's no emissive. And then down below we have the red, green, blue map, and that could become our emissive map. And then I just promoted this to a variable and called it emiss color amount. And if we have that set to either 0 to 1, we can get a blending between A or B. So it's like in Photoshop, if you had a layer on top and a layer on bottom, and you go into Photoshop and you go to the opacity, you can change the opacity of the top layer over the bottom layer, and that's basically what's happening with this linear interpolation node. So it's actually pretty powerful, and you can blend two textures together, you can blend values together. So pretty cool. So I definitely wanted to show you that, and we can put that linear interpolation node on there. I'll just go ahead and save this, and then we go to our material instance. And what I did was made a group for our emissive. And then we've got this emissive color amount. So you can see that I could raise this up to, if I put it up to 1, then it's taking that red, green, blue that we have in our texture, and it's driving emissive values for that. And then we can drag this down to 0, which has got no emissive at that point. Or we can raise this up to what we think would be a good value for everything. Okay, so I can go ahead and let's just save this, and I'll hide this right here like that. And so that's the two different types of transparency that you can get inside of Unreal. They do have other shading models like for hair and things like that, but if you're going to be doing grass and foliage, this is the mode that you want for this. Now I know we're doing we're doing this Minecraft kind of grass, so it looks all pixelated and it's kind of low res and everything, but hopefully you understand from just this little setup that we've made here what the options are for you for exploring transparency and having that. The last thing that I will say about this is we have this mapped to a card, right? And really, if you want to be as efficient as you possibly can with the transparency, it has to draw all this transparency over the top of the transparency of some of these other cards. And so if we went to take a look at this optimization view modes and go to shader complexity, we can see that transparency that's stacked on top of transparency becomes very bad. So this is the high end of this, and this becomes pretty bad as far as shader complexity and how much the computer's got to work on kind of figuring this out, because we have transparency that's over top of transparency that's over top of transparency. So if we take it off this and go back to lit, I just want to show you that that exists. What we can do to try to help out with that problem is this. If we went back to Maya and we went to our card system, I'm going to hide the big block here, and we took a look at our cards that we have. Let's just hide all the cards except for this one here. And if I hit Control A to bring up the attribute editor, and I went to the Lambert material and I just mapped to this thing, I'm going to have to do a little bit of work in Photoshop, and I'll show you why here. Taking a look, so we can only see the shape of these grass cards because we have the alpha over the top of it. Now if I select the transparency of this, so I'm holding down Control and selecting that, hit Control Shift I to give me the selection inverse, and that exists up within through here like that. And if I put this back to just color, and if I do this, if I start to hit my levels, I hit Control L, that'll bring up my levels. And what I could do is just drag this over and darken this all up, so I can kind of see what's going on with this thing that I'm painting. I'm going to hit Control minus to go back out to where we can just see it about at this level. So if I just resave that Photoshop file, I can hit Control Alt S to do the save copy. I could save back over the top of that target file that we had and make sure that it's 32-bit. Now I can go into Maya and I can use that as a color map. So I select this checkerboard here and go to File, and then just navigate to where this sits on here, and got to go to this area, textures, and then here is the grass targa file like this. And I like to just steal the name of it, copy that, and then paste it up here in the file name. Just hit enter. And if I tap 5 and then 6 for my texture mode, I can start to see a little bit of what's going on with this and through here. Let's take a look at the filtering mode on this. So let's go back to selecting this, hit Control A, we got our material here, click on this color that we have within through here, like this. And if we change this filter type from quadratic to off, we can see just purely the pixel data that we have for this. Remember, if we do the isolate select, show isolate select view selected, the hotkey for that is Control 1. We can take a look at this. Maybe this card is not the best example of this. If I want to add these new cards to this and say show isolate selected, I can say add selected objects. Let's see which one would be good. I'm trying to just find one that's got more simple grass like this. So I think this one would be a pretty good example. Okay, so you see there's a lot of alpha going on this card, and what we can do to try to help this out is if we use the multi-cut tool. I'm going to do Control Shift X, and that will bring up the multi-cut tool. And if I could start to split this apart, right here like this, and then maybe I go right here like this. And if I select this face and I cut this out, then at that point, then I have reduced the amount of alpha that it has to draw. Now, if we're being really meticulous about this, then we could cut even more out on this and try to get as close as we possibly can to these different pieces that we have within there. But I think you would definitely want to try to maybe make some decent geometry. So I would just hit enter for that. And with game res meshes, we can have quads, we can have triangles, and we would be fine for that. And if you wanted a little bit more to build actually some curvature to this, we could do this, and then so I'm just right click and say vertex, and grabbing these verts, and then moving them back like this, and you can see how we're starting to build a little bit of dimensionality to this. We could even finesse this a little bit and make it so it's just not purely straight. And then that would start to have the illusion that there's some depth happening on there. So those are some just quick techniques for how you could reduce the shader complexity on that a little bit, and then you could actually get a shape that's just not this pure card looking thing. And to be honest, this is going to make your grass cards look a whole lot better if you were able to add some dimensionality to it. So I'll just do this one pretty quickly like this, and I'll try to put a split going down through here like this. Now it's possible we could just take these edges and we can move those forward instead of selecting the verts. So now that we have everything in position, I basically wanted to just show you that we have really set up a pipeline. So at any point we can go through and we can edit these things and change them, re-export them out. So I'll just go say File, Export Selection, do the FBX for this, and overwrite the old one. And this is the way that we should be working. We should be able to get everything in, be able to re-import those options that we have. So you can just right click, say re-import, and it should update the meshes and everything else like that, right? So what I did with this card, this is the one that you can see here. I took this and then threw this into this area to be able to take a look at it. And I'm getting a little bit of slowdown. I'll change this to medium right there like that, just to move around a little bit quicker. So with this card, I was able to put this in here and then reposition it, duplicate it a couple different times, and you can see what that looks like on there. And then when done, I'll put this back up to cinematic for everything and have everything look a whole lot better. But I am getting a bit of slowdown because of me doing the screen recording, and video memory is running out. So let me just go ahead and I'll just save all these like this. And again, what I just wanted to call out is the fact that we have basically set up a pipeline to where you can build these different bricks, you can change your textures out, you can set up your materials, you can tune your materials, you can get things in there like grass. If you want to try knocking out something like trees, you could do that. We figured out how to set up a material instance so we can do something with world position offset, so we can do something like water, and this should give you a whole lot of options to create a nice little interactive world for yourself.